Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another Create a Sim for the Disney Save. Today I'll be making the characters from the Disney movie Luca. They will be living in the residential home that I just created in my last video. It is the main house, Giulia's home from Luca, and it's probably the one that you remember most from the film. It's a really cute coastal Italian home and I had so much fun making it. Definitely check that out first because I do talk pretty extensively about some of these characters in that as well. So if you want some more background and info on these guys, I recommend starting out with that and then coming back over here. I'll be making Giulia, Luca, Alberto, Giulia's father Massimo, and their cat today, and they will all live in that household. They're not all related, and if you're familiar with the film, you know the circumstances that kind of bring them all together. But we didn't have a ton of space in Tartosa, so in order to maybe cut back on one residential and have more space to do other things, I opted to have all of these characters living together, since they do in the film at one point anyway, and by the end it does kind of come out that Alberto stays with the dad and Giulia and Luca end up going and staying with Giulia's mother. So they do all sort of live together regardless. Giulia's aspiration is goal-orientated. She is a bookworm and active. Giulia is very outgoing and unafraid to say who she is and what she thinks. She's very sporty and enjoys her coastal lifestyle by helping her dad with his fish shop and biking around town making deliveries on his behalf. She lives with her mother during the school year and enjoys school and learning new things. She has a particular interest in space and astronomy, often using the neighbor's telescope on clear nights for stargazing. Giulia makes friends very easily and is kind and very easy to talk to. Her hobbies include astronomy and science, learning, travel, sports, cooking, swimming, fishing, biking, and making new friends. None of the characters in today's video will have any sort of fame, which is a very refreshing new take. I've had to make a lot of famous Sims recently because I've been doing like Greek gods and Hercules, and it's been just a lot of new famous Sims added to the save. So it's definitely a breath of fresh air to just make a little bit more normie Sims and not have to worry about that. Now, when it comes to Giulia's outfit, I really love how it turned out. It's so spot on to what she wears in the film. The only thing about it is that like when I was observing like Giulia's general wear, I was surprised that she wears what she does. She kind of has these like longer jeans and she does wear a winter hat of some kind, and I know it's just for the aesthetics and it's kind of like the style of the movie. They get to show off textures and cotton and knit fabrics and things in really high quality, and it's like the artistry of the film. But it also to me doesn't make a ton of sense considering where she lives. But then again, she does spend a lot of time outside. She is always on the go, and she also is shown to help her dad with fishing quite a bit. So she's probably on the water, and when you're under the sun like that, you do want lots of layers or lots of things to protect you from the sun. So I kind of get it, but her outfit does scream like more winter wear or maybe just like not Italy vibes to me. Regardless, it came out super cute. I'm really happy with it. Especially finding that striped top was such a good find. I spent a lot of time trying to make these characters look as youthful as possible. One of the things that I don't particularly like about The Sims 4 is the fact that the teen body and the teen like structure, life state, looks so similar to the young adult. If you switch back and forth between the two, there's truly very minimal differences. And it's such a shame, which is why I don't often opt to make some of these characters teens, even though they might be teenagers, and I went back and forth on this quite a bit with Luca in particular. I think that these characters are anywhere from 12 to 14 years old, so to me, they could be teenagers, but the teen life state in The Sims looks so old, and it's so close to young adult that it starts to look at like that 16, 17, 18 range, and I really didn't think it fit the character models super well. Unfortunately, the choice is kind of made for me because you do have to have the teens be the mermaids. If you are younger than 18, you can't use the mermaid life state, and that's so important for the storyline that you're trying to tell with these films. So regardless of how I actually feel about how the models look, I did have to choose teen. So I spent a lot of time trying to make them look super youthful. There's a lot of tricks that you can do to do that, and things like trying to make like wider, flatter faces, have that round look to them, especially all of the characters have these really round circular eyes that are huge, and that helps with the youthfulness as well. Not doing a ton of makeup or sunken in angular sort of features, not super full lips, anything like that. And again, it matches the art style of the movie, so it helps to make them look super recognizable. It all works out in the end. But all that to say, I really did spend a lot of time trying to round out their features and make them look very youthful, and I think that it did come across overall. Moving on to Luca, his aspiration is live fast. He is creative and cheerful. He will be a mermaid. Luca is sometimes reserved and a shy kid, but he wants to be more brave and outgoing like Alberto. He really looks up to Alberto's willingness to try new things and travel the world with no rules and aspires to be the same. He can be a little socially awkward and reserved, but he's always very kind. Luca lacks understanding of who he wants to be due to coming from a sheltered home that did not allow him to explore all of his interests. He is a sea monster that recently found out he could remain on land disguised as a human and is doing so with Alberto despite his parents not allowing it. So just in case you're not totally familiar with the film, and I only give this premise because I feel like Luca flies under the radar in terms of Disney media, and versus like if I'm doing Beauty and the Beast or something like that, I don't really need to explain the story of Beauty and the Beast. But with Luca, I have had quite a few people tell me they've maybe never seen it or it's just not something that they were interested in. So if you're not familiar, Luca does have two parents. I will be creating them in a different video. They're actually going to be townies for the Disney save. He also has some other family members that are shown in the film. I believe his grandmother lives with them, and he has an uncle that is shown later on. And he finds out that he does have the ability to leave the water, which is like a big thing in the film, but his parents do not want him to because they feel that it's unsafe for him to do so. He's a sea creature and they will not accept him on land as like a human, or if anybody finds out he's a sea creature, he could be hunted, sort of a thing. But then he meets Alberto. Alberto's really brave, and he's also a sea creature that spends a lot of his time on land. So they meet up, become friends, and then Luca wants to be more like him and be free and spend time on land as well. And they both venture off eventually to be free, live more of like what they want to do, and they run into Giulia along the way, so they end up staying with her for a long period of time. By the end of the film, they all kind of remain together as well, which is why I've opted to have them all live together under one household, even though they're not related. It's also a nice addition to the save because, true to real life, a lot of times people who are not related will often like remain in households together for various reasons, and although they're not like roommates or anything like that, it's a little bit more of a complex situation. It makes for a really unique dynamic. Luca had to be made into a mermaid for the Disney save for obvious reasons. It's a shame that we don't have some kind of variation on mermaids, just so you could maybe do like a lighter form or a darker form, or maybe if they had allowed some more like alien-esque sort of features to go into the process of making mermaids, so you could almost make like sirens, or in this instance sea creatures. But I did try my best to make it look very fishy and as close to the film as possible, but also very different than like your standard mermaid, thinking like Little Mermaid and Triton and his daughters sort of a thing. I wanted Luca and Alberto to really stand out and be super different. I couldn't give them some of the things that they have, like the fishy ears and webbed hands, and they also have some scales and fins on their arms and things. And the other important note from the movie is that they actually have legs, and they have like a longer tail in addition to the legs. So if I would have been able to like fully make that as it was, that would be really great. There's some awesome custom content that will make it so that your Sims look just like how they're supposed to from Luca. I'll try to remember to link them down below, but I know people have posted them in my Discords before if you're curious, or just search Luca custom content Sims 4 and you will find it, I'm sure. This is one of those instances where I personally would probably use something like that because it does give them the legs and the tail, but since I'm working with what we have in game, I just opted to do like a lot of layering and try to use some of these scale pieces and try and do something that was a little bit more fishy looking. The characters are very thin and their arms and legs are drawn super skinny, so I tried to thin him out as much as possible, and then also layer makeup on his face to try to give the best impression of like ombre skin tones that I possibly could. He has this really weird mix of like a blue and green skin tone. I think it's supposed to be kind of like a fish where like it's different colors if it hits different lighting, but regardless, he has like an ombre skin that again I just wasn't able to replicate. So instead I opted to make him blue, which I think is kind of his primary color, although you could argue that it's green. It really depends on the images that you're going off of. His mother and father are two different colors, and one is blue and one is green, so I think he has like a mix of both of their skins. So I tried to mix it the best I could by just picking like a base skin tone and then doing lots of makeup to blend things in where I could. It's not perfect, but I am really happy with all of these characters and how they turned out. I think they're really recognizable, and with a little bit of custom content, it would just put it completely over the top, so I'm happy at the end of the day. Moving on to Alberto, his aspiration is also live fast. He is loyal and loves the outdoors. Alberto once lived alone in the abandoned old Portorosso Tower. His father left him several years ago to fend for himself and find his way alone alone in life. Alberto admires loyalty and longs for stable friendships and relationships. He can be a little jealous when he feels like his friends don't care for him or want to spend more time with someone other than himself. Alberto is very outgoing and brave. He likes to try new things and wants to travel all over the world. His hobbies include building, Vespas, swimming and water activities, exercising, making new things out of wood and sea scraps, and collecting. I'm not sure why, but during creating, I was most nervous to try and do Alberto. I think it's because he has a very unique hairstyle and he has that Disney look to him that is sort of like an over-the-top, voluminous, unique hair that makes him sometimes hard to translate. I think that hair can make or break resemblance for a lot of Sims, and I was able to find one that I was super happy with. I think that he did overall turn out looking like his character, so it all ended up being a good thing. Fun fact about all of the sea creature characters, that includes Luca and Alberto, and later on when we do the Townies video for Luca, his parents, none of them wear shoes. They all sort of like collect clothing from wherever they can as soon as they hit land. Some of them do wear variations of clothes in the water. Like I mentioned, they do have legs. So Luca and Alberto both wear some sort of shorts, and then the parents have like dresses and shorts that they wear also. But when they come on land, they're trying to disguise themselves to look a little bit more blended in with the community, so they show them stealing clothes, but none of them bother to steal shoes. I think they're very confused by the shoes, so all of the characters walk around barefoot. I made it a point to keep that feature in, so Luca and Alberto will be walking around without shoes. It's not a mistake, it's definitely done intentionally, and it's also kind of funny. When creating Alberto's mermaid form, I faced the same issues that I did when doing Luca's. He doesn't have the option to have an ombre skin tone. However, I think it's a little bit more clear what skin color I was supposed to pick for Alberto. He is like a purpley blue sort of color, and I was really keen on making sure that I tried to find a hairstyle that added purple to his features, because he has a lot of like purple scales, purple fins, things like that. Purple's a really weird color in The Sims 4. It's not an option for hair colors most of the time, and they tend to like skip it as an option when creating clothing options and makeup and sorts of things. It's just not a color that they do a lot in the creation process, but you can sometimes get these really cool, especially with some of the newer packs, ombre hairs that have mixtures of lots of colors going on, and that's exactly what I was looking for. Considering that they're underwater, and actually when they're in their like sea monster form, they have different hair that appears to be made out of like sea kelp or coral or something more organically natural to the ocean. So their hair looks completely different when they're in this form, and I can get away with picking something that is shaped differently than how they actually look as humans. I was really lucky to be able to find this one for Alberto. It is kind of different to how it looks in the film, but I had to opt for it because it added the ombre and the colors of blue, and particularly the purple, that helps blend in the makeup and his scaling and everything. It really just suited his features and helped him look like himself a lot more in this form. So even though it's not perfect in terms of shape, I had to do it because of the coloring alone. And again, just making him really as thin as possible in the mermaid form. You can't do super drastically different body shapes between the two forms. They are locked to a certain degree. I figured this out when I made Ursula, because Ursula has a more round form in her like mermaid form, if you will. And then when she's Vanessa, she's supposed to be shaped kind of after Ariel, so she uses basically the same body and structure as Ariel. But if you make them really, really drastically on one side of the scale in one form, you can't change it too much in the other form. So you have to find this like middle ground. You can shape it a little bit, but the game like locks the body type, which is a shame. Next up is Giulia's dad, Massimo. I hope I've been saying that correct. His aspiration is super parent. He is family orientated, a foodie, and loves the outdoors. He has a cat named Machiavelli, and that will be also included in today's video. He is a fisherman, which is cool because that's a job that we have in the game, and he also owns his own fish retail shop that is located under the house and was also included in the last video if you wanted to check that out a little bit more. Massimo is a very reserved man. He keeps to himself and shows affection in very simple ways, like cooking meals and spending quiet time with his daughter. Massimo runs a fish shop and spends almost all of his time either out on the water fishing, making deliveries, or working in the shop on the bottom floor of his home. He is a proud business owner that enjoys his work and simple life. If you didn't know him well, you might think that he's a grumpy man, but he's just very quiet and doesn't like to partake in chit-chat. He enjoys things such as fishing, cooking, caring for his cat and daughter and working. Massimo is kind of that like full representation of the stoic but distant sort of father figure. He is definitely very involved with Giulia, and it seems like he has a really great relationship with her, but he doesn't have a ton of lines in the film, and Luca and Alberto are kind of afraid of him when they meet him, both because he's a very large person and also because he is a fisherman, so he has hooks and spears sort of around. So in the beginning, I think they kind of see him as like a somewhat scary sort of enemy. He also has a cat, and the cat realizes pretty quickly in the movie that Luca and Alberto are a little bit different, so the cat is onto them. I think the combination of the two of them always being together and kind of like their presence is a little bit much for the main characters, but you can tell that her father is not a mean character at all. In fact, he's very much the opposite. He's kind of like gives that teddy bear energy, very kind, just very simple and sort of quiet. If you haven't seen it, there is a Disney Plus like extra, what do they call them, short or mini series, and it is about Alberto and Massimo, kind of their relationship and how they get along after the events of Luca end and Alberto ends up staying there and like living in Giulia's room. It's really cute. It shows a little bit more of both of their characters, but it also like it kind of brought tears to my eyes because it's a little bit about like newfound family, and in particular Alberto's circumstances being abandoned by his father and like finding this newfound father figure. It was a really cute short. It's like maybe 3 or 4 minutes on Disney Plus if you haven't seen it. I watched it before I started making all of my Luca stuff just to do some research and things like I normally do, and I recommend it. I was also watching it to hopefully go through and maybe see some more of the shop and the house so that I could get some really great reference. It doesn't actually show the interior of the store, so I ended up having to come up with most of that by myself, but it all worked out in the end. His outfit was probably one of the hardest to place. He has a layered sort of look, but he also is missing an arm. I wanted to recognize that that's something I would have loved to have been able to add here, but obviously you can't do things like that in The Sims currently. Hopefully that'll be a future update that I'm able to come back and fix that. He also wears lots of layers, and he is often sporting an apron. Whenever characters have aprons, I tend to ignore them in place of like the clothes that they're wearing underneath, because we don't have a lot of options in terms of like apron outfits, and some of them are full body choices that often include like really modern looks, such as like pens in pockets or weird things sort of attached to the belt or holes in jeans, or just jeans in general when you're trying to go for more of like a canvas look. Supposedly this film takes place in the 1960s, so I'm trying to think about that when creating all things regarding this movie, including their outfits and things. And I think I found something that I am happy with generally, but the hardest part really was the brown pants. I just couldn't find any that were the right cut and the right texture and everything. I ended up opting for like some workers pants because he spends a lot of time working, and I think that's his primary sort of thing in life. So having jeans didn't really fit. Holes in the jeans definitely didn't fit. Instead, doing like carpenter pants or some kind of like workers pants ultimately ended up being the best decision. And then to close out the video today, we have the family cat, but primarily Massimo's cat. They spend a lot of time together, and he goes fishing with his dad very often. His name is Machiavelli. He is absolutely like unique in terms of coloring and how he looks. I was not sure what type of cat he is supposed to be. I googled it, and usually you can find something somewhere where there was like a official reference for what type of animal, like what breed the cat or dog from the film is based on, so I have like a starting point, but I could not find anything that like officially listed his breed. So instead I tried to find like a long-haired white cat for the base that was very plump looking, like just generally get the body shape there. And I don't even remember what breed I chose in the video. Maybe somebody could let me know if you're familiar with this breed, but this was the closest that I possibly could find, and some of the colors that came with the base form were already pretty close to how he was colored. He actually has like very unique coloring because it almost looks like the right side of him was like dipped in something. Like his right front and back paw have this brown black sort of ombre look only, and then he has like a brown and black striped tail and ears, and the rest of him pretty much is white. I'm getting a little bit better at Create a Pet. I'm learning how to like use the different brushes and mix things together and hopefully make it look more natural, but I do always struggle with the line between doing like a cartoony sort of animal and doing something that looks a little bit more realistic. realistic. It's hard to match and mix those art styles between Disney and actual pets and The Sims 4 in that particular way. Like, for example, around his mouth, he has this almost mustache looking piece, and it's very round and very clean cut lines, and that's more of like that cartoony look, whereas the rest of him is blended very well and looks like he could just be any normal cat. So I tried to give him like a mix of both, and I think ultimately he came out really great. It's super successful. I have one more Luca commercial themed lot coming up next for you guys, and then we will do a towny Luca video. There aren't going to be very many. It'll include his parents, like I mentioned, and then one additional character that you could probably guess if you're familiar with the film, and then we'll be done with Luca, and we are moving on to the last film for Tartosa. I will be announcing what that is very, very soon. A lot of you are going to be super excited about it. It's like a big one. It's one of those ones that people really, really love. It's also a movie that flies under the radar for Disney as well. I feel like I've been hyping it up too much, but I think it's just one that I'm personally excited for because the characters are super iconic, and I'm excited to do like all of the really unique characters that come from that movie as well. And it comes with a bigger-ish build, or a more like magical, mystical build that I think a lot of you are going to like. And that is it for today's Create-A-Sim. Let me know which character was your favorite in the comment section down below, and if you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.